right, so we'll go ladies first to start with Diane. So name, style of work, and how long?
Diane Scalise. I've been engraving since 1986. So that's 35 years? I started out with bright cut engraving, Western bright cut engraving, and I went to gun engraving and knife engraving and Bellino and stone setting, jewelry, watches, pretty much across the board.
Awesome. Mitchell?
Mitchell Lurth. I engraved at about 18 is when I started, so it's been over 10 years now, and I started the jewelry business, getting into the jewelry business about 4 or 5 years ago, but I've always grown up around it. You know, my mother is the manager of a jewelry store ever since I was little, and that's basically how I learned about engraving, and I actually saw your work and Sam's work, and that was, of course, the inspiration. Your penny was like, I saw it, I was like, that's what I want to do right there. That's what I want to do. So, but today, you know, I engrave on guns, knives, jewelry. I set stones. I do inlay. You know, try to do a little bit of everything for sure.
I'm Sam Alfano. I've been engraving professionally for 42 years. I actually stumbled around and struggled for about 10 years before that. But I became and started calling myself an engraver in 1980. I was primarily interested in gun engraving, and I did that for several years. I worked at New Orleans Arms Company where I was a gun engraver. And after that, I engraved custom knives almost exclusively for a number of years. And then primarily jewelry now. In the past several years, I've been mostly a jewelry engraver. But I've engraved jewelry actually from the get-go too. There was always some jewelry that would come in even between the gun engraving jobs. So I've done a little bit of everything over the past 42 years.
I'm Nevada Miller, and I've been engraving, I guess, in total about 10 years now. I started in high school, and I did a little bit, went to college for science and business, so nothing in the art realm. Moved to the middle of nowhere, now we ranch full time, and I also do engraving. So I would say I'm probably the most specific. I haven't got to experience all the different kinds of engraving yet or tried it. A lot of mine is whatever the time I get with everything else that's going on. So I do mostly jewelry, Western eclectic kind of jewelry. It's not the most generic stuff that you would find in a Western store. I like to think outside of the box and bring a different spin on it. I do mostly bezel set stones, not really faceted stones. And a lot of stuff that I do, I want it to hold up in the lifestyle that I live. So a lot of it is something that you can wear doing whatever. So I like to kind of throw that out there too.
Yeah. Todd?
Okay. Well, Todd Daniels. I've been involved in art in one way or another all my life, and basically just saw the value of marketing with jewelry and engraving. And so I actually went to school at Miami University and got a degree in art there. And it's funny, like they always say, most of your learning starts when you get out of school. And basically been, a jeweler for probably around going on 38 years now. So worked on a lot of different styles. Been lucky enough to do a lot of different things that have really given me a big, rounded package with what I can do, anywhere from stone setting to engraving to fabrication to, pretty much the whole package. I've been pretty lucky to learn the whole ball of wax as far as manufacturing. So it's been a long journey, but I really enjoy it. It's for sure. It's been a good time.
That's awesome. We've kind of got to know you guys as artists and, instructors and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people probably want to know, if you were not an engraver or a jeweler, what would you have done for a living? Miss Diane?
You're going to laugh at this, but I'd have been an accountant.
Really?
Yes. I'd like to have been a tax accountant.
Like to have been, man. He must be a good
That's
person.
funny.
Good
Oh my
person.
goodness.
There's still time.
It's a puzzle, you know? Yeah. I think what I like best is that you can be all by yourself in an office where nobody bothers you. I like that. I like that about engraving.
That's
That's a
great.
good point.
Just you and your numbers.
Yes. Me and my
Mitchell?
gravers.
Well, actually, I probably would have gone into the realm of science, whether it be, I weirdly enough, I really like to learn about things like funguses and bio and things like that. When I was getting my prerequisites out of the way, I just went to community college and I was in organic chemistry. And everybody else in the class was going to, either be a chemist or a dental hygienist. There was a lot of those in there. And they're like, what's your degree? And I'm like, well, I'm an art major. And they're like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, this is, organic chemistry is definitely one of the harder chemistry courses that you can take.
Yes.
And I just love science and I love nature, and so I probably would have gone into something like that.
That's awesome.
The
Sam in
engraving
clown school
biologist.
and engraving wouldn't have worked out. Well, where would you have been?
Well, I was a professional musician for 9 years. I might still be a professional musician if it wasn't for engraving. I also like sloth grooming. But I was never able to develop that into much of a career. I like art, illustration work, portrait work.
What was the catalyst that drew you out of music and into engraving enough to leave it long? Like, obviously you still play from time to time and things, but what made you leave to become a full-time engraver?
Our band broke up.
That was enough, huh?
That was it. After 9 years, we parted our ways in 1982, and I had already been engraving, calling myself an engraver for a couple of years. So I just made the transition from musician to engraver. I kind of established myself with the local people for jewelry engraving and gun engraving, and just decided to make a go of it, and here I am.
Oh, I think, we're probably, me and Mitch are on the same kind of line. I love like exercising and movement of body. Like, I went to school to be a physical therapist. I'd probably do something in that realm. I just think that it's really important, a holistic view. I'm a better engraver because I actually go out and do something to physically make myself better, so then I'm mentally a little bit better. So I think it's all, I don't know, I think a lot of actually people that are into art also are into science, because nature's beautiful. There's so much beauty in nature and science, so probably something around there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. I mean, really, sports, science, mathematics, it all goes together. I mean, it's amazing how those things you can translate even into art that you do. I probably would have been involved in some kind of like sports physiology or, some kind of, maximizing your performance. It's just all very interesting. So
That's great. We kind of have a unique perspective here, and we kind of put the group together this way on purpose. We have two of the longest tenured, and Todd, you've been teaching at the training center for a long time too, but Sam and Diane, you guys have been here for a really long time. And then you have Mitchell and Nevada, who haven't been teaching that long. The question is, though, is what drew you to teaching? I mean, you guys have all been successful as artists and, within your craft. What made you want to actually share that and take on the teaching role?
You go first this time.
Okay, I'll go first. I taught music as well, so I had some experience teaching, and I enjoyed teaching. I wasn't sure I could be an engraving teacher. I didn't have anything against doing it. I just didn't think it was for me, and I can't explain why other than it just didn't feel right. I was unsure of myself. But my good friends here at GRS talked me into trying it one time. So I came here to teach a class. They said, just come here and teach for us one time, see if you like it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. So they talked me into it, and I came and I taught, and I loved it. And so this is my 22nd year here. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Diane?
When Jairus asked me to teach, I said yes immediately because I had struggled so hard to find out how to bright cut. And nobody would talk to me, and I couldn't. I had to figure it all out from the very beginning, and I'd sit there late at night trying to make bright cuts, thinking if I ever figure this out and someone comes to me, I'm going to share it, because if we don't, it's going to die. Bright cut especially was going to die. And back then it was so closed, no one would say, oh, try this or try that. And I thought, no, I'm gonna spread the word. And then I really panicked because I thought, now you got to tell somebody this is how you do it and this is why you do it. And that was difficult, but I really wanted to get it out there, and I wanted to get it out there for other women. That yes, there is room in this world for women engravers. I think they bring a lot to the art itself.
Nevada, what do you follow up on that? I mean, that's an interesting perspective.
Well, I was so lucky. I took Diane's class however many years ago, and I've been blessed. My father also teaches here, and I've been blessed to be around a very open environment. We grew up in a generation a lot more that information was it was approachable, and people would actually talk to you. So honestly, I in no way consider myself an expert or done learning, and I actually hope I never am done learning, because to me it's something, there's always another way of doing something. And I think because I'm a young girl, it maybe makes me a little bit more approachable, because I'm like, hey, I screw up all the time. Like, it's a thing, and I can show you what I know. I may not know everything, but I'll show you what I know, and we'll go from there. My line is like, if a blonde can do it, anyone can do it, which take that or leave it. But I think it makes it more approachable. And like you said, that a lot of women weren't doing it. Now I think that's wide open. But I've never felt put down upon just because I was a woman, thank God. Like, even in the Western lifestyle, I think in the cowboy world, women work just as hard as the men. I mean, no one ever really puts you down. So luckily, that's kind of the world that I knew. But yeah, it was just one of those things that it's like, man, if I know this, might as well share it. And it also, for me, it makes me such a better maker, because to actually think about, why did I tell them to do it that way? And you're like, oh, I spent 10 years trying to figure out that. And I'm like, oh, well, if I can save you some trouble, might as well.
It's mostly eliminating mistakes.
Yes.
I made that mistake, so you don't want to go there.
Don't be me. Be better than me.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, I'll kind of follow up on that, because one of the questions I had, and I think a lot of people would be interested to know, is, and you guys kind of have different focuses as far as the way what you teach, but what's the biggest mistake that you see a new artist make?
I think that people are hard to, it's very hard for people to take themselves to a point of failure. And it's been taught many times now by many groups that if you can't go to that point or beyond, you really can't find your potential. And it's really something that's up and coming, I think, as far as for teaching. And people need to know that they need to take themselves to that point, because if you always stop before you know you're going to fail, you'll never know really how far you can go. And that's, I think, a big part of what should be in the future now for people. They should accept that rule to better themselves.
And taking your time too. You know, today it just seems like there's a lot of instant gratification, like in the world. It's what we want. We want results now. But this is something that's going to take time, and it's going to take years of practice. But if you stick to it, then, you know.
And I think we all make it look easy because we've been doing it, and it comes almost, well, it's second nature to us. And the student doesn't realize what we put into to get to that place.
Yeah. And, you know, you have to remember, you know, like they say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, you know, because you basically don't make mistakes when you do that. You think about every step, you know.
One of the things I see is some students doubt themselves. They set themselves up for failure by saying, oh, well, that's really hard. I'm never going to be able to do that. I can't draw. Well, when you have that mindset and you say those words, you're setting yourself up for failure. So keep an open mind. Don't doubt yourself. You can learn. Don't place limitations on yourself. Think positive.
Well, it's okay to fail too.
Yes,
I mean,
and it's
there's
okay.
nothing
Yes,
wrong with that.
it's okay to fail. It's okay to make
You should
mistakes.
accept that.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. They see this. They see the instructor demonstrate, and then they do it, and it doesn't look like what the instructor who's been doing it for decades, and it's might be a little bit of a letdown. It is a letdown for some people, but you got to give yourself credit for what you've done, and then be able to correct what you didn't do well and make it work. But self-doubt, I think, is one thing that I battle with some students. And when they tell me, oh, well, I can't draw or something like that, I say that the can't word is not allowed in this class. You can say, I have difficulty drawing, or I'm going to get better at drawing, but don't say you can't do something.
That's great. Kind of to follow up on that, do you guys remember your big aha moment, like cutting, whether it be Todd setting stones or, learning to engrave or something like that? Was there a moment for you where it kind of hooked up and clicked and you were like, I get this now, even though you're still learning, but what did you have that moment? Was that a thing?
Many
Oh, yeah.
moments.
Yeah, I've had a lot of aha moments.
I've had a lot of them.
I still have
And the
them.
opposite, the crap moments too happen.
I mean, talk about it. What are some of the early ones? Because I think some of the people that are watching this, they may be interested in getting into the art for the first time, or maybe they're at the beginning of this. Maybe they have equipment or are waiting to take a class and are kind of going at it alone, or however it may be. I mean, this isn't a sales pitch for us. I really genuinely want to know, when you guys first started out, what was that first? Like, I'm kind of getting it now.
Well, I think, what you see is not necessarily what you understand. And it's amazing how that develops over time. Because I can remember looking at pieces of art or different structures that I want to try to understand. And it's interesting how you look at it differently as you mature in what you do. So I think your eye for understanding grows with time. And just like your skills grow, I think your understanding of what you're seeing, it grows as well. So I think that's what kind of gives you those aha moments, so.
One of the biggest for me was seeing Linton McKenzie's engraving in hand for the first time, because prior to that I'd only seen photos. And I would look at his work and I would look at the cuts, and then I would look at mine, and I knew he was doing something different than I was doing, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I wasn't sure. And then I had the opportunity to see a piece in hand, and I saw the way he beveled his cuts. He rolled the graver slightly to give these cuts that nice character and flair, and it was like, that's what he's doing. I couldn't wait to get home and try it. And when I did, my work it spiked. That was one of the biggest aha moments for me, and it's something that I tend to preach to my students in my classes, and I teach them to roll that graver, bevel those cuts, instead of having the graver straight up and down the whole time. Vary the line width and thickness and get that nice sparkle. That was, I guess, my biggest aha moment.
That's a good one. I think for me, like how I learned was with bright cut, and with bright cut, depth is really, really important. And I think for a long time I struggled with being unsure of myself, that I wouldn't actually get the depth and the width that I needed to make bright cut as impactful as it can be when it's done correctly. And I think that was just trusting yourself enough to let that graver go deep and really get that metal out of there. And also just, if you're gonna make a cut, like, make it intentional. So even if it does look bad, you're like, I can still say that I did that intentionally. I think that helped a lot. Just, I don't know,
You know,
Go in with
confidence.
confidence. Yes.
Confidence in that cut is big. You have to just know it's going to go right.
Yeah.
Now, maybe not, but the next one then.
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, it was getting my graver sharpened right.
True.
The right
That's a good
angles.
point.
And then I started hand pushing in the silver. And now all of the cuts started to make sense because when you do it by hand, it kind of all falls into place and you feel that metal and you feel that graver and you know exactly when your graver is wrong. If you always use air, you can engrave with a screwdriver, but you wonder why your work doesn't look very good. But if you push, you know it just like that, and you stop and you correct that. It was big for me.
You guys have kind of touched on this a little bit, and part of putting this group together was again kind of the difference in your ages as far as how you came up in the industry. I'd be really interested as far as Nevada touched on this, but you know what it was like for Sam, Diane, and Todd starting out without YouTube, without the Juris Training Center or other said class, or you know there's not Facebook groups, there's not the Engravers Cafe. I mean, what was it like?
It was tough.
Kind of lonely.
It was.
Well,
No one to talk to.
bluntly, the school of hard knocks.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
secrecy.
mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, because people didn't like to share stuff. You had people that have been with guilds and things like that they were kind of insecure and they would really not share anything with you. And it was sort of what you went on earlier, the fact that you think, okay, when I learn this, I'm going to share it. I'm going to show people how to do this, because is it right to hold somebody back by just not giving them information? That's crazy. I mean, if they can do it and you give them information, you should praise that.
You should
know?
you should be able to stand on the shoulders of the people who came before you.
Yeah,
And that's how you advance any science or art or math.
right. You don't try to hold people
You don't
back.
try to start in the very beginning each and every time. You have some help along the way.
Well, think about if your hands are always doing this, you can't think forward and you can't actually work forward. So think less about the people you want to hold back and just how can you make yourself better.
Thing is you can't hold anybody back. You might think you can. You might delay their progress a little bit by withholding information. And the people that didn't want to talk about technique and how to back in the day, we didn't think ill of them. That was just the way it was done. We pretty much accepted it. And I think it was an old world mentality that came from when you were the only engraver in the village. Why would you teach somebody else to be an engraver? Because then the slices of the pie get smaller and smaller. So this tradition lived on for decades. And when I started, there was very little information out there. If it wasn't in the public library, and it wasn't in the bookstore, to me, it didn't exist. Little did I know there were some antique engraving books that had been around for a long time, but I didn't know anything about them. And then The Art of Engraving by James Meek came out. When I saw that advertised in a magazine, I couldn't believe my eyes. Here was a book that was going to teach you how to engrave. And I had owned gravers for 10 years. I bought from a mail order catalog with the wooden handles, and I put them in the wooden handles, and I scratched around for forever. Just couldn't make any progress. I only knew one person who knew an engraver, and I asked him, I said, would you ask your friend if he could show me how to sharpen or tell me anything? He says, well, I'll talk to him. And then he called me back. He said, I talked to Gene, and he said, not no, but hell no. That was pretty much typical of the way it was back then. But it's a different world today. And by not sharing information with me, he didn't hold me back and keep me from being an engraver. If you want it bad enough, you'll get it one way or the other. None of it. It's arrogant to think that you can actually hold someone back. If that's their destiny, they're going to make it one way or the other. You might delay it a short while, but they're going to make it.
It just made me more determined.
I'd say it might make your passion stronger. By God.
I'll be better than you.
Well, passion is the basis of all success, really.
Yeah.
It's just what drives us all to better ourselves is our passion for what we see and what we do and what we love. It's just a part of the system,
That's awesome. Kind of an interesting question. You know, well, I was thinking about you guys. I feel like I can pick all five of you. I feel like I can pick your work out by looking at it. I mean, you guys all have a style. How does an artist end up with their own style, and how frustrating is it to get there?
That just occurs naturally.
Yeah.
I see people, not only engravers, but artists, and they ask the question, so how do I develop my own style? When is it going to start looking like mine? What do you have to do to develop your own style? Well, you don't sit down one day and say, okay, I'm going to develop a style. It doesn't work that way. You start by, basically, you copy what you see. And then over time, it starts to become yours. There's a gradual transition. And as more of yourself goes into it, and then your style starts to emerge. But it's not something that you can predict. You can't do anything to make it happen. It just happens naturally and over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your style is just what you like about the design of the engraving, whether you like big leaves or skinny leaves, fine shading versus, sculpting. That's, just those, picking out those aspects, and then if you use it consistently, then that's your style.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, whether you emulate some other artist that you adore or maybe something that exists in nature, those things come together, to develop your actual style. I mean, the things you see all around you will affect you in many ways.
I think it's important to look at lots of different art. And what would you incorporate from this, whether it's a painting or a sculpture? What would you like to incorporate? And you pick out little things, elements that you think, well, what could I do with that idea?
I give kudos to engravers that have a signature style. When I see their, for instance, Jake, I can see engraving and I know exactly that's Jake's work because it's a signature style. The same with a lot of other engravers. Mitch, for one, I can spot his work. Mitch and I probably like a lot of the same type of heavy leaf design with lots of fine shading, but his doesn't look like mine. Mine doesn't look like his. But, we borrow from each other, and our styles have developed. Like Diane said, you borrow bits and pieces from what you do like, and you start to incorporate it together, and then over time it becomes your own. But it's not something that you can rush. You can't hurry that process up. It just occurs naturally and slowly, unfortunately.
But I wouldn't say don't limit yourself to a style. I do the spaghetti scroll or whatever just to mix it up. I try to, do other things. Nobody wants to be labeled for one thing, but
I think it changed for me. So I make all the pieces as well. So a lot of it is the fabrication pieces. And I think what kind of maybe made me more confident in my own work is I just make stuff I want to wear. So I guess it depends on what year it is, what styles I'm into. And so I think for me, that passion translates to the things that I'm selling because I'm focused on making a living from this. And if it's something I'm excited about, the person that's looking at it is going to be more excited about it. And for a while, I never kept anything I made. Nothing. A lot of the first things, I have no idea who ended up with them. And I was like, why don't I actually make stuff that I actually enjoy wearing? It's silly. And so once I started doing that, I think that's when, pieces started coming together in ways that I wanted them because that's just
I think one of the benefits of teaching and getting to know each other like this, which we didn't used to be able to do because we didn't have a place to get together other than maybe the Firearms Engravers Guild, but that was limited to what type of engravers would go. But what I wanted to say is the mixture, and you do a wonderful mixture of different styles, and then you take them down a different path because there's fewer boundaries for you guys than when I first learned. You were when you did look at work, it had to be pretty traditional. And I would have someone say, oh, you can't bright cut that. Or when I first started with silver and I couldn't figure out bright cutting, I was single pointing because you can get books on single point. So I was trying that and they'd say, oh, you cannot single point silver. That's just awful. Oh, okay. So then you'd follow that path. And of course, that has come clear around. Now everybody wants to single point silver. Anyway, it's really fun to see all of the mixing up that has come from the sharing, different styles.
And I think don't always do what you find to be easy to do. If you want to develop or to evolve a style, you have to try to do things that aren't necessarily easy for you, or even maybe completely successful, but through the time of spending with those types of different techniques can evolve into something special for yourself. So
I love what you said about push yourself to failure, or to the point where you're afraid you might, and then see through it. I like that.
Yeah, so many people stop too early, and I always told my kids, I said, don't be self-defeating. If you're self-defeating, you'll never find what you can actually do,
I just have one last question, and it's my favorite question anytime I get to ask artists, and that's, where do you see the future of the industry? Now, industry is a big word as far as it's very broad, but I think for Diane and Nevada, I'm very interested in where the future of the Western market's going. And then, jewelry, everybody here actually does jewelry engraving or setting or fabrication in some form or another. And then just single point in general. So kind of interested to get everybody's take on just where you see the industry as a whole going, and maybe even the state of where it's at right now.
Customization, I guess. That's what
And
people
quality.
want, those unique pieces, and they all want something that's, production made. But I would say, custom.
I think customers are more knowledgeable now than they've ever been, and I think that we can thank the internet for that, because a typical scenario plays out where a young couple is looking for engagement rings, wedding bands. They decide they want to have them engraved, so they go online and they type in engraved wedding band, and they are exposed suddenly to every type of engraving that there is, whether it be deep relief, whether it be the repeating leaf typical style that we see. So the customers are getting more and more knowledgeable, not just jewelry, but guns and knife collectors and watches and the coin carvers. We have exposure now that we never had before. It used to be, when I first started, my first 20 years, if you weren't at the shows, nobody would see your work. They didn't know what knife engraving was. They didn't know what custom knives were. Now everything is online. So the customers are more knowledgeable. Where the art is going, I don't know. 10 years ago, I was at the Fega show and I said, okay, this is it. Engraving cannot get any better now than possible. It's gotten as good as it's ever going to get. The work was amazing, and then 10 years later, it's gotten a lot better. The bar is continuously raised. Where it's going to be in another 10 years, gosh, I have no idea. But it just keeps getting better and better by the day.
And very diverse too, very diverse as far as many styles, and it's just really, really neat to see all the different things that people are doing. It's a really neat thing, for sure.
Man, if we had like a time machine, we could jump ahead and actually see. I see a bunch of people starting, but I don't know if I see as many people taking it from. For me, I'm all about business. I like making money, so I think that's important. I don't know if I see as many people taking it from a hobby sense to like a professional sense, if you want to use that word, that are actually trying to get better. I feel like I see a lot of people my age in the world that I live in just making what is trendy, and there's a lot of copying going on, and blatant copying because it's trendy and that person's selling it, so they're going to do it. So I think we've got to get past that, and they've got to get like, oh, I can actually put my own spin on this. I can actually do something with this that doesn't look like anything I even see. So I think it's a hopeful thing. I think that because everything is out there, it's going to be way more competitive than we've ever had before, which is great for everyone. It makes us all step up our game. Definitely, I want to step up mine as well. So there's a lot of people starting. I'll be interested to see if that follow through is there, maybe. That's my thought.
Diane?
I can only reiterate what these folks have said, and I'm not really sure where it's going to go. I know it's going to be exciting. It makes me want to run faster, work harder. I mean, it's just you see so much cool stuff, and I think I got to incorporate that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to have motivation to work harder.
Oh, there's always the horizon is always off a little bit further, and I find the engraving
rabbit's
world,
taken
and
just a
probably
little
all
bit.
art world people feel that way. It's like, oh golly, I want to keep going.
That's awesome. I want to thank you guys all for taking the time to sit down and talk with us. Probably should start doing this yearly at least. I mean, a little more often. It's a great opportunity for us to sit down with unbelievably knowledgeable and respected artists.
I'm honored to be here with these talented, incredibly talented artists and instructors.
Well, thank you.
That's awesome. All right, guys, we appreciate it.
Thank you.